something.
I was speaking to Ankie Kroch one day about a rather painful experience I had because of a position I took on a cartoon by Zapiro. And she mentioned, I forget his name, one of the great cartoonists of the 80s and the 90s, and she said that he had told her the cartoonist is an assassin. No mercy. You go for the jugular. I didn't like that. There are brilliant cartoonists who are like that. Satire can be a vicious, cruel weapon, but I think it's more effective when it's got, instead of having poison at the point of the lance, it has generosity, openness, it makes you laugh and smile at the same time. It doesn't make you more angry. But that's my nature. I used to feel when I was locked up in prison as an anti-apartheid fighter, sometimes even thinking of myself as a revolutionary, there was something wrong with me. I didn't hate the gods. I was a failure. There was a deficit. And I was interviewed by Anthony Lewis from the New York Times, 1990, the time of change. And he said, well, Albie, you'll be going back to South Africa soon. Are you imagining Nuremberg trials? And I said, Tony, no, but I think there's something wrong with me. He said, you can relax. I've spoken to Mandela. He said the same thing. I've spoken to Sisulu. He said the same thing. Kathrada, the same thing. So it's clear that I belong to a generation. It's not purely personal, where we're trying to transform a system, the structures, the ways things are done, a constitutional order, and we're not aiming at individuals, at particular people. So that venom, that bitterness, the gall, I don't think was part and parcel of our DNA. Either we were the people who didn't have it and survived in the struggle, or somehow in the course of the struggle we sweated out the bitterness. And the same applies, as far as I'm concerned. The satire that works best is a satire that is powerful and humane. Zapiro generally is like that, but the cartoon that distressed me, and I spoke about this in public, was the one showing Jacob Zuma, before he became president, about to rape the Lady of Justice. And it wasn't a question of whether it was legally permissible or not. I think the law has to be very, very flexible and open. But the sensibility involved and the images that it will invoke that go well beyond the particular case. The Zapiro was very upset. He felt that I was now kind of letting him down at a time when he was involved in litigation with Zuma. And it was a very awkward time for me, particularly since I was the judge in the Laugh It Off case who had written the most powerfully and forcefully on the importance of satire, of humor, of parody for democracy, not just for fun, not just for laughter, but laughter, humor being an elixir of democracy. If you don't, you bottle up the tensions in society and they come out in ugly ways. And humor allows you to release and engage with often very harsh, difficult kinds of conflicts and tensions, but in a way that it's subject to the control of humor, release a kind of movement forward. And in the Laugh It Off case, and being here in Grahamstown, I feel quite... this is a moment to pay tribute to Justin Nurse, who had a graduate of Rhodes University, School of Journalism, had produced T-shirts taking the logos of a number of big corporate institutions in South Africa and poking fun at them. And he was acting on the sort of argument by Naomi Klein on logos. And the challenge was the manner in which logos were colonizing the mind. The logos, for example, for Nike, wouldn't say get a Nike running shoe because it's attractive, it's strong, it'll last forever, it'll help you win races. It just said, let's do it. It's your dreams. And she was concerned and he was concerned with the extent to which advertising material like that was beginning to colonize the minds of people and the emotions, and simply for the sake of selling products. That was the main theme. And the bank, Standard Bank, didn't mind the appropriation of their logo and some other corporate industries in South Africa, but Carling Black Label, the beer, South African breweries were very, very upset. Dutch or Belgian people, very upset. You can sell your T-shirts, but you don't use our logo to do that. And what he did was he took the logo, and it said Carling, instead of Black Label, Carling Black Labor. Instead of America's lusty, lively beer, it said South African exploitation for 300 years, something like that. And the High Court upheld the application to prohibit the distribution and ordered Justin to pay costs. He took it on appeal to the Supreme Court of Appeal. They upheld. And they said, you have freedom of speech, you can criticize the Labour policies as much as you like, but you can't use the logo to sell your T-shirts. And it came up to our court, and Icham Moseneki wrote the main judgment for the court overturning the prohibition and saying there was no proof of any material loss of sales to the beer company, and on the other hand there was freedom of speech. But I wanted to take it a bit further. I said, what about the role of humour in society and the right to use parody not only against government, which is generally acknowledged, but against big business, who are also powerful players in our world. And so I wrote, I think, one of the most enjoyable decisions I gave in 15 years on the court. It starts off, does the law have a sense of humour? That's the question. And I end up by saying that humour is important for democracy. It's not just important for freedom of speech generally. You need humour in an open democratic society. But I also took up the issue of the logos. Some of my colleagues were uneasy to get into that kind of ground of thinking, and I supported his right. And I said, we as judges don't have to decide, does he hit the mark? Is it really funny or not? But his right to use the T-shirts to challenge the power of the logo, the power of corporate advertising that doesn't deal with material facts, but that is trying to capture dreams. So I became then, if you like, the hero of the satire community, and I went from hero to below zero. I ended up by saying, what should the role of the artist be in that situation? I said, sitting on the fence. What? Albie, who spent his whole life taking positions, saying don't sit on the fence? But in that situation I felt, well, sitting on the fence, particularly if you're a guy, is actually a very uncomfortable place to be in, quite literally. And you don't have a foot firmly on the ground of absolute free speech, and you don't have a foot firmly on the ground of saying don't do anything that's offensive. So you have to find an appropriate balance. But that's a balance guided by your humanity and your sensibility and your feeling for history and your understanding of the things, the currents and undercurrents going around in your society.